Hey, welcome back. So one of the biggest myths that people have about being a millionaire is that you need to be born rich, marry rich, or be a Fortune 500 executive. And the data actually shows otherwise. And so in today's video, I want to give you some statistical facts on how many Americans are actually millionaires. If you're new here, my name is Alice. I'm a CPA. I help you with all things personal finance, and sometimes I talk about business too because I like it. Do me a favor, if you find these videos helpful, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, turn on that notification bell, and let's get into it. So before we get into the stats of how many millionaires are there, let's first start with the definition. A millionaire is someone who has a net worth of $1 million or more. So if you own a house with a market value of $2 million and you have $1 million left on your mortgage, so you've paid 50% of it off, you are technically on paper a millionaire. Another example, let's say that you've built up $500,000 of equity in your house and you have a stock portfolio of $500,000. That then also makes you on paper a millionaire. Now, how many millionaires are there in the United States? So according to the 2022 Survey of Consumer Finances set out by the Federal Reserve, only 12% of US households have a net worth over $1 million. And between 2019 to 2022, the number of millionaire households in the US went from 9.8 million to 16 million. That's a huge number, approximately 1.5 times more. So these are households, 16 million households, not individuals, that are millionaires. So what does this actually mean? It actually means that there are a lot of millionaires in the US, and there's actually a pretty high chance that you know a millionaire statistically. But here's the thing that might surprise you. More than 50% of millionaires in the US actually live in a neighborhood where the average household income is below $75,000 a year. And nearly a third of millionaire households live in a zip code or area where the home values are below the national median average. 6 out of 10 millionaires live in a house valued under $500,000. So these are surprising statistics because when the word millionaire comes up in your mind, usually your first thought is, somebody with a private boat, a jet, a Lamborghini, but that's not actually necessarily the case when we look at the data. If we break this data down by age group, it actually shows that the average millionaire gets to millionaire status by mid-40s to early 50s. Now let's talk about where these millionaires are actually at. Where do they live? Now, according to Dave Ramsey's article here up on screen, California is home to the most millionaires in the US, which is then followed by New York State and Florida. And if we were to break it into cities, the most millionaires in the US, they live in New York, which is then followed by Los Angeles and Chicago. Now, I recently just came back from a trip in LA. We spent a couple of days in Disney. We rented a car and we drove around LA. We always like to go check out some of the nicer spots whenever we go traveling. And we were at this beach. It was a beautiful beach with almost white sand, beautiful waterfront houses. And as I was walking through, I remember thinking to myself, damn, I would love to live here. And the first thing that came to my mind is, well, how much does it cost? It must be in the millions. So as a CPA, I've gathered quite a bit of work experience over the years by working with a range of people and companies. By the way, if you guys are interested in understanding how management consultants and Fortune 500 executives think and structure their businesses, make sure you check out my video up top there. I talk about financial operations and controls. That is a video that companies would pay a lot of money for in terms of advice. So make sure you check out that video up top. Most people become millionaires in 2 primary ways. The first is to build up equity from their home or their primary residence where they live. And the second is through the markets, right? Retirement accounts with investments in the public markets. Those are the 2, what I would call traditional methods of becoming a millionaire. Now, I read this book a couple of years ago that actually changed my life. It's called The Millionaire Fastlane by MJ DeMarco. It's literally one of the most life-changing books you could ever read. MJ, he talks about how there's actually now a faster way of getting to millions. And you can do this with explosive net income, because the traditional way of retirement accounts and building up equity in your home, not that those things are wrong or bad, the idea of becoming a millionaire is now much more democratized and accessible to everyone because of the way technology and internet and soon to be artificial intelligence has really changed the world. And these opportunities have basically allowed people to achieve explosive net income without having rich parents or being generationally wealthy or having a lot of wealthy connections. And of course, saving aggressively your income and investing in the market still does hold true. So let's talk about the habits of actual millionaires. And I'm going to cite actual data here from Ramsey Solutions, or Dave Ramsey's company. The first is investing. Okay, according to this survey, 8 out of 10 millionaires invested in their company's 401k plan. And that simple step was a key to their financial success. And so something that I've also spoken about on this channel before is when you contribute to a 401k, if it's a traditional 401k, you also get a tax deduction as well. So that reduces your tax income. So the 401k is something that's designed to help Americans build wealth. But not only that, 3 out of 4 of those surveyed also invested outside of company plans. So what does it mean to invest outside of your company plan? Well, that could mean investing still in the stock markets, but with an IRA, which is not a company plan. It could be buying cryptocurrency. It could be buying other sorts of assets, but it's not just investing. It is the habit of investing consistently and regularly in the markets over a long period of time. That is what leads to success. And that is what we call dollar cost averaging. In fact, 3 out of 4 millionaires do this. So let's say that you get paid $4,000 a month and you save 20% of that income, or that's your goal. So let's just say that you already have an emergency fund set up, you don't have any debts or low debts. You take that $800 and you put that $800 in the market. And so in a 12-month period, that would be almost $10,000 of money invested into the markets. Now, according to data, the S&P historically has gone up between 7 to 10% year over year. When people think about stocks or buying stocks, my assumption is that they tend to focus on the gain portion of the stock. So it's like, hey, I bought a stock for $10 and now it's at $12. And that is, one of the biggest benefits of buying stocks. The stock price goes up, but there's also the other side, which is the income that you could get from a stock. And the income that you can get from a stock is considered passive income, whether it's dividend income or interest income. And if you can use that dividend or interest income to purchase more stock every time you get paid, that's what we call the effect of compounding. So that is how millionaires use their money to make more money, and how you can do the same for yourself. And now let's talk about money management. What do millionaires actually do with their money, and what kind of habits do they have around managing money? So 94% of people that were studied in the survey actually said that they live on less than they make. Okay, so if they make $4,000 a month, they're only spending $3,000 a month. It means that they have savings, they're paying themselves first, and they're always cash flow positive. And nearly 3/4 of these millionaires have never carried a credit card balance in their life. Carrying a balance on your credit card can impact your credit score if your credit utilization is too high. So if you have a $10,000 limit on your credit card and you carry more than $3,000 of a balance on a regular basis, that can actually ding or hurt your credit score. And the other thing is interest rates, right? Because interest rates on credit cards are very, very high. And it's also a compounding effect as well. It starts to become financial quicksand, right? Because that interest starts to basically snowball and it becomes quite hard of a trap to get out of. Now, when people think about millionaires, it's very common to assume that, oh, that person must have inherited their wealth. It must be generational wealth. Their parents must be rich. But according to data, the overwhelming majority, 79% of millionaires in the US, they did not receive any inheritance at all from their parents or other family members. And 1 in 5 of them did receive some form of money or inheritance. Only 3% of them actually received $1 million or more. Now, as a CPA, I personally know from my own experience that wealth, whether it was made in a previous generation or in the current generation, it's always made and created from business, investing, and real estate. And a lot of people that are wealthy, it's usually a combination of the three. You can also earn a very good living, be a very high income earner, a professional, dual income, high paying job in a city with a modest cost of living. If you're frugal enough, invest consistently in the markets as well. And that's what a lot of people do And the data shows that this is how most millionaires are actually made. If you do choose a professional career, here's a breakdown of the main jobs that are often cited for people to become millionaires. Let's talk about the rich millionaire paradox. Despite having $1 million in net worth, whether that's in house or stocks, you might not feel like you are a millionaire, or you might not feel rich. If you have a net worth of $1 million, in my opinion, or I would assume, that you would not be able to afford a Lamborghini, a boat, and a private jet. More than 50% of millionaires, again, live in a neighborhood where the average household income is below $75,000 a year. Think about your own city and the nicest neighborhood in that city. Like, I live in a city with a very high cost of living. And even if I drive down the nicer streets of my city, and I observed this when I was in LA as well, you drive down the nicer streets with nicer houses, a lot of times the cars in those houses, they're usually just regular cars. And so with all of this data that we've looked at today, the conclusion really is that there are many more quiet millionaires in the US than it actually seems. Another thing is inflation. Right, being a millionaire in the 70s, that meant much more than it does now. When you go to the grocery store, you see something that's $5 and you know that a couple of years ago it was only $2.50 or $3. So that is how inflation impacts you. Ties back to this finance concept that we call the time value of money. $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow. Governments, they will make policy decisions to try to control inflation, right? And they usually try to target this at 2%. Let's say you were a millionaire in the 70s. That $1 million would actually be worth $8 million today when adjusted for inflation, going back 5 decades. And $1 million in the 70s, going in the other direction, when adjusted for today, would be $124,000, okay? Which is actually barely enough to even buy a Porsche 911 base model today. If you guys like this video today, I think you're gonna love my other video on the 6 levels of wealth in the US. In that video, I break down a report from the Federal Reserve. It's completely backed by data on the levels of net worth and income that you need to hit in order to get to the next level of wealth. Let me know down in the comments below what questions you might have about today's video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Until next time.